Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're doing a little bit of a different thing here. We're doing the history of the Nuzlocke Run, which is a Pokemon thing, and Mike knows all about this.
Yeah, so I had this idea of doing like self-imposed player challenges. And when I say I had this idea, I'm pretty sure someone sent me a message about it. Didn't look it up. Very professional. So,
well, then it was your idea.
Exactly. That's the way that stealing works. Okay. So we're going to do hopefully other episodes on this too. But today I wanted to talk about the infamous Pokemon Nuzlocke Run and what it is, how it works. Do you want a Nuzlocke Run? Here's some tips kind of deal.
Sweet. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I've never done a Nuzlocke Run before, and I only know kind of tangentially like what it is. Like I've sort of just absorbed that information, but I don't know if I know all the rules or anything like that. So I'm excited to learn.
Oh, you're about to learn. Here we go. So the first question I'm going to answer is, what is a Nuzlocke Run? So a Nuzlocke Run, that's spelled Nuzlocke, is a self-imposed set of rules used in Pokemon games. The original Nuzlocke Run only has 2 rules. And I say original because there are so many variations.
I bet.
On Nuzlocke running, which we'll get into in a bit. But for now, these are the main rules and 2 non-official ones that kind of everyone does all the time anyway. So the 2 rules that were written down in the original Nuzlocke Run were, first, you have to catch the first Pokemon you encounter in each area and nothing else. This does mean if you accidentally KO the Pokemon or it runs away, you can't catch anything in that area. So
Dang.
A Pokemon game is typically routes, right? Or routes, however you want to say it, right? So the first route, for example, like from if you're talking about Pokemon Red, from the professor to the next town is 1 Pokemon on that route. Usually it's a Pidgey or Rattata, let's be honest.
I think those are the only ones that can show up in there.
Yeah. And then so from there, you get the first one, you catch it, and then you can't catch any more that entire way. So the first gym, you have your starter versus with your Pidgey and Rattata versus everyone else, essentially, versus the world. So,
Dang.
Second rule, if a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead, and you must either throw it in your PC and never use it again, or release it.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah, so it's like permadeath for your Pokemon.
So what happens if you lose if all your Pokemon die? What happens?
Well, thank you for bringing that up. That's the next unofficial rule. Pretty much the way that most people do it is if you lose a Pokemon battle, meaning all of your Pokemon faint, you lose. Like, you're done. It's time to reset the game and start again.
Oh, you can lose a Pokemon game like that. So it is hardcore mode, like Diablo 3 hardcore mode, where if you die, that's it. You die.
You die in the game, you die in real life. Yeah.
Oh,
it's done.
Man.
Mm-hmm. It's really stressful. So the other rule that I was going to mention that's unofficial, on top of the whole if you die, as in you lose a Pokemon battle, you're done, is every Pokemon has to have a nickname. Because that makes you love it more and you become more emotionally attached, which makes it all the more difficult when you eventually have to release it because it's dead.
Dang, this sounds like the whole point of this is to just feel bad.
It's, you're not far off.
All right. Okay.
All right. So those are the 4 like main rules. Most people do that. Some people, like, I know the one rule about like if you lose a Pokemon battle, you're done. That some people do a variant rule where there's like a checkpoint every time you beat a gym. So if you lose, you can go back to that gym and start again. But the real way to do it is if you're done, you're done. You know, that's like the hardcore way to do it. So how did Nuzlocke Run start? So Nuzlocke Runs can actually be pinpointed back to one person, which is pretty unique. Their name's Nick Franco. Franco, in the winter of 2010, described himself as, quote, a bored, not yet webcomic artist at UC Santa Cruz, end quote. So he decided to make his own special rules to play Pokemon Ruby and make Pokemon Ruby harder and share his adventures in comic strip format on the infamous website 4chan.
Oh, wow. We love that website.
Yeah, right? And the comics were titled Ruby Hard Mode. So it wasn't even called a Nuzlocke Run. It was called Ruby Hard Mode originally. And you can still read the archive of these comics today. They're on Nuzlocke.com, which is Franco's website. And he's also done other runs of other Pokemon games there that you can look at with comics too. And it's funny because the comics have gotten like better and better over time. Like, you can
good.
tell
So
his,
he
like,
got better at his skills.
Yeah, and also like the first comics, like, I'm gonna be honest, they haven't really aged well as far as like jokes go. and stuff, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like, it's still like,
Well,
I'm
they
like,
were on
this,
4chan, so.
Yeah, like, this feels like me in high school, like be around my friends in high school. That's what it feels like, which is fine. I mean, if you're okay with that, then I would say read them. If you're not okay with that, then you could probably skip them. But regardless, the comics are definitely not safe for work. But they tell a really funny story about his adventure trying to make it through his first Nuzlocke run in Pokemon Ruby. And along the way, you watch Franco poke fun at some of the Pokemon he is stuck with and the story of Pokemon Ruby in general. He like kind of makes fun of it, which is neat. Needless to say, Franco's adventure in Pokemon Ruby got so much attention that people on the magical place called the internet started to emulate the Nuzlocke run, and they added their own special rules and variations and also tried it in different Pokemon games. But why is it called a Nuzlocke run? You might be screaming at your headphones or in your car right now. Well, there are two reasons. The first is Franco would post on 4chan and his name was Nuzlocke.
Well,
but
that solves it.
And probably the more legitimate reason, like the Nuzlocke thing about his name, I'm like, I think he like they say that in the like Wikipedia entry, or with the Bulbapedia entry. There is no Wikipedia for Nuzlocke, but the Bulbapedia, which I'm trusting Bulbapedia as a good source here because the people that fill that out love Pokemon.
Yeah, I think it's probably reliable.
Yeah, I used Bulbapedia and I used Nuzlocke.com to get a lot of the history facts, and then I watched a lot of videos and read a lot of articles for the other stuff we're going to talk about. But Franco, I think really the real reason this happened is because in the webcomics there is a C dot that evolves into a Nuzleaf that Franco just randomly decides to make a running gag that the C dot and the Nuzleaf look like John Locke from the TV show Lost. This is how dating works for this. We're dating ourselves here. And fans of the comics just started to refer to it as Nuzlocke, and the name was born. I think that's really the way it happened. I really am starting to wonder if Franco changed his username to Nuzlocke after that happened.
That sounds better. That sounds more...
Yeah, because I couldn't really find, like, which came first, the name or the adaptation from the fans. You know, it's hard to tell, and you can't really figure it out, but there's a lot of contradictory information in this, like looking it up online, and it's really going to get to that point when we start talking about like the games themselves and which ones are harder or less hard to Nuzlocke run, because oh boy, is that a whole can of worms that we're going to open up. But
I can't wait because I want to do one of these at some point, and I want to know the best way to do it.
Me too. And I think there is some games that are easier and harder to do it on, and we're going to get to those pretty soon here. This is not going to be a very long episode today. It's very quick, but I thought it would be fun to just talk about this because, hey, you know, it's a fun little challenge, and we've been talking about the Ultimate History video games for a long time, so why not break it up a little bit? So,
I'm down.
Variations on the Nuzlocke formula. So there's like hundreds of variant rules for Nuzlockes, honestly, but I'm only going to mention some of the more common ones here. The first one, and this is kind of also, it might even go into the unofficial rule of like with the nicknames and the permadeath, is change the game settings from shift mode to set. And if you don't know what that means, when you play a Pokemon game default, when you KO another trainer's Pokemon, it tells you who's coming next and it asks you if you'd like to switch. That's shift mode. Turn that off and you're stuck in the mode. That Pokemon's stuck in the turn. So it kind of makes you lose a turn. Gotcha. To switch out Pokemon, and I think that makes the game much harder.
So this really is all about increasing the challenge then. So like all of the things that you can do that make the game more difficult, you should be doing basically, at least in terms of what's available in the game and options and stuff.
Yes, and I think that's the first one. And honestly, every single person I watched on YouTube do a Nuzlocke run plays this way. They all turn off shift mode and put it on set. So honestly, if you're just trying to play Pokemon and make it harder, that would be the first thing I would do. If you didn't want a Nuzlocke run, but you just want a little more challenging Pokemon game, turn off shift mode, put it on set mode, because that's going to make it so you don't have that free turn to switch out and essentially like match the type, you know, like trainer's bringing out Charizard. Well, here comes my Squirtle or whatever, you know, like
when I played this game, when I played Pokemon back in the day, I turned that off because I usually just used my starter and just like power leveled my starter and never used any other Pokemon. And I thought that the like asking me every single time to switch my Pokemon was a waste of time. I was like, I'm never going to switch my Pokemon. So I used to play with set mode when I was younger.
Well, you know, that means you're just so hardcore. is what we just found out today.
Yeah, really, I just didn't want to think about strategy at all.
There's something about those early like Pokemon Red and Blue and just doing that though. Like getting like your whole team is like a bunch of shrimps and then your starter is just like this giant ripped Pokemon.
Yeah, that's usually how I did it.
All right. So the second variant rule is actually, I think this one's really fun. It's called Wonderlock. So every time you catch a Pokemon in that first area, when you first encounter, you immediately Wonder Trade it away and then use the Wonder Traded Pokemon. So I hope you're ready to have a bunch of level 3 Caterpies on your team because that's what Wonder Trading is.
What's Wonder Trade?
Oh, Wonder Trade's really cool. So Wonder Trading was, I forget which game introduced it. I was doing it in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but I know it came before then. It's a random trade. So you take a Pokemon and you just say, I'm going to Wonder Trade this. And then another random person in the world who's also on Wonder Trade just gives you their Pokemon, and it's just blind. You have no idea.
Oh, it's like over the internet?
Yep, it's over the internet. It's just blind Pokemon slot machine of what you get. And I've gotten usually really terrible Pokemon. Like you usually get Magikarps and stuff like that. But this is also how I got a hacked Deoxys Pokemon that's like level 99, and clearly like this person hacked this Pokemon and gave it to me. It's just insane.
Just trying to help people out on their Wonderlock runs.
Yeah, I guess, but it's just really funny because it's Wonder Trading is just so random that I think it's a really fun idea for this Nuzlocke run, because it could also it could make a game much harder, but it could also be goofy because you could get like a level 99 something and be like, well, I Wonder Traded it, so here you go. The other variant rule I want to talk about next is pretty much changing how items work. So that includes like no healing items. You can't use potions or revives. No held items. You can't use like the little bell or the quick, is it the quick claw? I think it's quick claw. Yeah. That makes your speed increase. Or you can't even use Pokeballs. Like some people play the game of Nuzlocke where you can only hatch Pokemon from an egg or use ones given to you by NPCs. So if you thought you'd have to grind a lot doing the Nuzlocke just the normal way, imagine having you can only hatch an egg. That would take so long. So the other one is changing it to make it even harder is you can only catch one Pokemon on the route after each gym battle. So instead of the other routes in between, it's like you beat the gym, then that first set of bushes after the Pokemon gym on the route to the next destination, that's where you catch it, and then all the other routes you ignore. So it makes it harder. No legendary Pokemon. The idea of traded and gifted Pokemon and legendaries also varies among folks, but from what I've gathered, the general consensus is you cannot trade Pokemon unless you're doing the Wonder Trade mode, because as we all know, Wonder Trade mode is normally like terrible. So like trading Pokemon with your friends to beat it is not really okay. Now, trading away something and getting a level 2 Pidgey, that's the best. That's what you need to do right there. There's also and this is what I found was really fun. There's multiplayer versions of Nuzlocke, and these are some of the variations that I think would be really fun for us to try, Tyler. Some versions involve you playing the game with another person at the same time on 2 different devices, and if one of you lose, you both lose. Like that's like a way to play it together. Yeah. Others involve more of like a relay style where you play the first gym and then you pass the controller on to the next person. They play the next gym, which I think is really fun to do. Like, so you're doing it together in like a house, like co-op style, which I think is really fun. Yeah. I think it's really cool. Like I really like this idea. And I think I watched a couple multiplayer Nuzlockes. And like, actually, well, I didn't watch the Nuzlocks themselves. I watched like their little animated cartoons about it, and they're really fun and they're really neat. And it's like, because you build suspense and you care about what the other person's doing, which I think makes the game way better. It
seems like it's a fun way to tell like the story of your Pokemon run too, when you have lots of different constraints of like, well, then I caught this Pokemon and that made it easier to do this or made it harder to do that thing. And like, so beyond the storyline that's being told in every Pokemon game, there's like the story of the trainer going through the game or the player going through the game and like how their Nuzlocke run is going. And I can see that being an interesting thing to watch on YouTube, even if you don't play a Nuzlocke run yourself. Just watching someone else do it and being wrapped up in their story is fun.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, for me, what made me like these the most is I went down just the biggest rabbit hole of watching people play these on YouTube or watching their like animations or reading their comics, and it's just super fun. Like, I'm really into it. But all right, so now we're going to get to the next section, and this is Pokemon games you can run a Nuzlocke on, from easy to hardest, kinda. And I'm saying kinda because there's not necessarily like a super easy one and a super hard one. Like, they're all easy and hard in their own way. And if you add these variation rules, they become even harder or easier, depending on how it goes. So originally, my plan was to do like a traditional countdown list of what Pokemon games were the easiest and which were the hardest. And the reality is, though, if you play these games, like, you could just play like quote unquote the easiest one and then get knocked out by the first gym, just random. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we're going to start with like the quote unquote easier. So these are the easier games. And as I talk more along the lines, they're going to be a little harder. So the first easy one is Pokemon X and Y. And this one's easy because the experience share really makes it so there's not a lot of grinding involved.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I sort of fell out of playing X and Y. The whole game felt really easy to me.
Yeah,
in a not fun way.
People complain that Sword and Shield is the same way.
Yeah.
It's like really easy. But this is considered one of the best in the series to start. If you're like trying to Nuzlocke for your first time and you want to get some confidence going, play with Pokemon X and Y Nuzlocke, because you're going to do pretty good, people think. As long as and again, if you go into it though and not prepared, you could get knocked out. Like, preparation is the key. Like, honestly, if I was playing a Nuzlocke run, I would have a guide near me at all times just to see what is coming up next, because it's going to be hard otherwise. So Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, this game is also easier because it has an experience share. So it's going to make it a little easy for you. But you'll have a harder time getting a balanced team compared to X and Y. It is still considered easy mode, though, to a lot of people. If you say, hey, I Nuzlocked Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they're like, oh, great, cool, whatever. And then move on.
You can't come to the ultra cool Pokemon party because you did the easy mode.
To my Nuzlocke party. You can't come over here. That's what they're going to say to you. All right, so the next ones I'm looping all together. That is Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, Yellow, Leaf Green, and Fire Red. A lot of the lists I saw didn't rope these titles all together, but I am, because I think they're all pretty much on a level playing field with some minor tweaks when it comes to Yellow, because in Yellow you start with Pikachu, which can make the first game, like the first gym, much tougher.
Oh man, that is hard.
You can also get access to all three starters in Yellow, though. So in a way, it's like, yeah, it's harder, but it's also easier. Once you get past that first gym, if you get all those other starters, like, you got a pretty well-rounded team.
Yeah, that's true.
So the nature of the old Pokemon games allows you to do a lot of grinding, though, which is what makes them kind of easier. So if you're willing to put the time in to grind out your Pokemon team and make them really tough, then you can probably beat these relatively easily, which I think is kind of how I did it as a kid. Like, I remember playing it and I was like 10 levels above the Elite Four, when I went in. Like, I was just way too high leveled.
Yeah, that's how I always did it too, because like, as a kid, I had more time than brains to think about strategy. And so I was just like, well, I can just grind out these levels and then I don't have to think about strategy.
Exactly. And that's the way to go. So what I didn't include in this list, even though they're technically the same game, is the Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu games. Because these are a little harder in that you have to catch a minimum of 50 Pokemon for your Pokedex at one point to enter a gym. So if you don't pay attention to what you catch and make sure those ones have evolutions, you could actually make the run impossible for yourself.
Interesting. Well, you don't really have control over what you catch, right? Because you have to do the first one that you run into.
Yeah, you have to hope that you get a certain Pokemon that has like 3 evolutions when you catch it.
Do those ones...
Oh, go ahead.
Do those ones have Pokemon that are like roaming on the field, though? They're not random battles, right? Oh, so you can pick which one you run into first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you do have control over it.
So you have control. You do have control. Sorry, I got confused. But when I watched the video of this guy running it, it was like 30-minute long video or something, and I watched him do it. He was definitely like going up and down ladders, because if you go up a ladder in a cave and go down, the spawns change.
Oh,
and he was doing that over and over again to get the spawn he wanted, because at one point also he was doing that to get a Chansey, because Chansey's just super OP, I guess. And he also did that to get in a cave I think it was Kadabra. I think there's a Kadabra that can show up in a cave at one point and you get that.
I feel like that's a little bit against the spirit of it. If you're just like reloading the RNG to get the one you want, like that's sort of like, why don't you just search for the one you want then? Like it doesn't have to be the first one. You know, why are you putting that limitation on yourself if you're just going to find a way around your own limitation?
Yeah, he would go up and down the ladders over and over again. And I was like, I mean, I respect the game, but also, yeah, I think that what happened in Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu is they really were redesigned without Nuzlocks in mind. And I was thinking about this because I pre-ordered Pokemon Legends Arceus. Don't know. I think it's
Arceus. That's what they said in the. I was watching the gameplay video they showed last week, and they called it Arceus on the Nintendo channel. So that's it. I guess that's what it is.
All right. Well, I pre-ordered that, and I honestly don't even know if this game's going to be Nuzlockable because it looks like it's very different from a normal Pokemon game, as in there isn't the 8 gyms and stuff. I could be wrong, but you're definitely. It looks like you're doing something very different. They have these like noble Pokemon, and it just. I'm curious to see how the Nuzlocke challenge will go into this because someone's going to try to make new rules for it.
Oh yeah,
because Nuzlocke is very popular. But okay, so that's Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu. So you can kind of bend the rules and you can kind of see Pokemon in the wild and change things up, and that really makes it a little bit easier if you're really paying attention. But if you're not paying attention, you can get into a spot where you've caught all the Pokemon you can catch and you don't have enough to get in the gym, and so you're just done, which is kind of lame.
Yeah, that does suck.
Sword and Shield. Much like Let's Go games are kind of hard to Nuzlocke because you can see the Pokemon now, like we talked about before. But because of this, you can strategize a lot more. So I'm going to put this as the same level as the Let's Go games because you can kind of do the same thing where you reload an area, going down a ladder or going through a door. So you can kind of take your pick as far as that goes. So Sword and Shield are there. And also Sword and Shield in general are just considered kind of easier Pokemon games. I've never played them.
Those.
I never played them either, but my friends would always be like, yeah, they're not that hard. I had even one friend say it was just kind of boring. And I'm like, oh no. He's like, yeah, you just like going through the motions. I'm like, that's lame. So, okay. Gold, Silver, and Crystal. This game mode is a little bit easier because the trainer levels and the gym leaders in general are not leveled very high. But this means that grinding takes a lot longer. But the gym battles themselves are not so bad. Because like you don't have to like the levels of the trainers are not as high, which means the Pokemon around them are not as high. So when you go into the bushes to try to like murder a bunch of Pokemon to level your guys up, it takes a lot longer to do. So this Gold, Silver, and Crystal are kind of in a weird spot where they're kind of in the middle, I'd say mid-range, not super difficult. But also they have their moments, Ruby and Sapphire. This is where it all started. With Ruby. So these are considered like classics. And I would say as far as like beginner to intermediate difficulty, if you were looking to start and you're like, I want a challenge and I want to know like their stakes, like Ruby and Sapphire are the way to start. The other ones are kind of easier. Like if you wanted to take it easy, I'd go with the ones I mentioned before. But if you wanted to jump right into it, this is where people jump right in. Ruby and Sapphire, usually.
Okay.
Diamond and Pearl. These are the games that got away from me. I've mentioned this before, but I got rid of Pearl. So I think I'm going to get the Switch remake because I need to beat this game.
Yeah, me too.
They're definitely harder than all the games we mentioned before for very specific reasons. The champion, Cynthia, is known as being one of the hardest fights for any Nuzlocke run. And if you go in unprepared, she can wipe your entire run, which is lame because she's the last boss. Like, you could do the whole run and get to Cynthia and just lose.
Dang.
Yeah. Also, Team Galactic is known to have some tough fights as well among the ranks, like the rank and file enemies. So these fights combined with a very limited variety of Pokemon types can make this much harder than, say, a Ruby or a Sapphire. So Diamond and Pearl are definitely like if you beat Ruby first and you're like, I need to be more challenging, Diamond and Pearl are a great place to go.
So you really got to know like what fights are coming up so you know which ones are harder that you want to grind out beforehand. What I'm feeling like is a good strategy here is to just be over leveled for everything. So knowing what the levels of stuff that you're about to go up against, you should just like out level them by like 10 or 20 probably. That would be my strategy anyway.
Yeah, that's a strategy. And the other strategy is to just know what's coming next and really go for typing more than anything. Because there are some Nuzlocke variants where you're not allowed to grind. which is just
crazy.
crazy.
That seems crazy to me.
Yeah, like you just got to do every trainer battle and like go for typing. I watched someone who would go into gym levels like 5 levels under everyone else, and they'd
That
still
feels
win.
like there's just a numbers game where that's just impossible at a certain point, right?
100%. They are. Yeah, they're playing a luck game. And
This isn't like trying to do a run of Dark Souls where you don't get any XP because you can always dodge and just do very little damage. Like it's just the numbers don't work in these games, right? If the numbers don't work, you're going to lose no matter what.
Yeah, they also would have a lot of Pokemon faint. And I think their rule was they could level another team member up to where their other members are, but they couldn't go past that.
Oh, okay.
So it's like they'd go into a gym, they'd lose 2 Pokemon, they'd pull 2 more from the box, they'd level those guys up to match what they were at before, and then they'd go to the next gym.
Wait, why do they have Pokemon in the box?
Because they caught some more on the routes. You will end up with like 50 Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
From
okay,
all the
that makes
routes.
sense.
From all the routes. Yeah. So it's not like cheating. It's honestly a way harder way to play it. I watched them do this and I was like, that looks terrible compared to a normal Nuzlocke run. Because in my mind, I want to just go like in the bushes and just kill all the Caterpie, just wipe them out of the population. Just like an invasive species.
Yeah, just totally taking them all out.
Yeah. So these next 2 are interesting because they're actually remakes that are harder than the originals. So Pokemon Emerald is a remake of Ruby and Sapphire, and the game is way more difficult than the original 2. First of all, the level curve is redone to be way tougher as far as gym leaders go, and they are also reworked and much harder gym battles. In the co-leaders, Tate and Liza, and then also the gym leader Brawly are known to be like 2 of the hardest fights in the game. And Brawly is a pretty early on fight too, so you can get knocked out of Emerald pretty quick.
Love it.
Pokemon Platinum is a combination remake of Diamond and Pearl, and there are more Pokemon in this game, which like makes team comp variety better, but it also means that the trainer team comp variety is better. So the type varieties are switched out, so a typical fight that you thought you knew would be very different. And on top of that, you still have Cynthia ruining everyone's time. That just her fights are even harder in this game. And
Dang.
Also, there's a new Distortion World area that you go into to collect legendary Pokemon in Platinum. And Cyrus is in there, who's also another like trainer boss, and he can kill your run pretty quick if you're not prepared for that. So it's like adding a whole new level of trouble to the game. Pokemon Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon. These games are considered more challenging in Nuzlocke because on top of your usual trainers, you have Island Kahunas, which are the gym leaders in this game, but you also have Totem Pokemon, which are like these huge versions of monster Pokemon. And the first one you fight is a Rattata, and it is actually really hard to do. I almost wiped just playing this game normally.
Just a giant Rattata.
Just a giant rat coming at you,
I hate that.
I hate it so much. But yeah, so Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and Sun and Moon are kind of known as being some pretty tough games to Nuzlocke. Heart Gold and Soul Silver. These 2 are kind of up higher on the list because it's in the things I've read, beating the initial game is actually not that bad. It's like on a comparison of like a Ruby and Sapphire, right? But when the difficulty ramps up is when you decide to go to the Kanto region and play Pokemon Red, because in these games, remember, you could go like to the Kanto region after. It had a whole like end game thing to it. If you try to beat that, it gets much harder. So there's a good difficulty ramp in the first part of the game when you're actually playing the Heart Gold, Soul Silver part. And then when you go into the Pokemon Red and Blue part at the end game, it's way harder. So if you're looking for like a longer experience, I think this one's for you. If you want to do like it almost feels probably like 2 Nuzlockes in one based on like that end game content.
Oh, that's awesome. I really like that of like being able to say you beat the game, but then also like, but for additional challenge, let's do the Kanto region.
Yeah.
And then you fight Red on top of Mount Silver.
Yeah. I never played Heart Gold. I never played Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I never
the best.
did.
I had Soul Silver. I love it. I still have it. It's like worth a bunch of money now, I guess, but I have the box and everything.
I've heard a lot of people say that it's like the best Pokemon games.
Yeah, I think so. I loved the original Gold and Silver so much, and then the Heart Gold, Soul Silver remakes were just like, chef's kiss perfect, and you could go back to Kanto. That's really it. It's being able to go back to Kanto, I think, that really makes those games for me.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum, Pokemon games that people didn't really like, Black and White and Black and White 2.
Oh, man. People didn't like those? I thought they were generally decently received.
I think people didn't like these for certain reasons. I'm not entirely sure, but this is one of those ones related to Nuzlocks where I've heard contradictory information, both on people that like it or don't like it, and also on how hard it is to Nuzlocke. On one hand, Black and White 1 is not too bad. But on the other hand, Black and White 2 is really bad as far as like difficulty goes. Black and White 1 still has some challenging gym leaders towards the end, but it's not as bad as the other games. Like, it's not going to be as hard as like the Kanto region or Heart Gold Soul Silver. But Black and White 2 has a very limited number of routes to catch Pokemon on. And unless you're using extra rules like a duplicate cause that lets you skip a Pokemon you already caught and encountered, it's much harder. The other new aspect of Pokemon Black and White 2 is Challenge Mode. And Challenge Mode takes a lot of steps to unlock. It's actually kind of weird. You have to beat the champion in Pokemon Black 2 and then transfer your save to a different cartridge to make it work.
Oh, do you go from like Pokemon Black to White or vice versa? And then you can, that's actually kind of cool though, because then you can go through the other game and catch the Pokemon you missed maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, so it's like you beat the boss and then a new save file is created on that cartridge that says Challenge Mode or whatever. And then you take that Challenge Mode save and you move it to another cartridge and then you play it. And if you do that, there's better AI trainer Pokemon, the higher level trainer battles, Pokemon hold more items, gym leaders will have more Pokemon in general. So instead of like a stack of 4 on a gym leader, it'll be 6, a full 6 Pokemon. There'll be different movesets and higher and more beneficial IVs for the computer players.
I want to do that. I want to now. This makes me want to play Black and White too, and like play through both of them. That's cool.
Yeah, I never played them. I mean, it's weird because I read some stuff online, and some people were really like, "Yeah, these are the least liked," and I'm like, "But I heard they're kind of making it off of New York." Was like the design, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. It's because every other region has been like very wild, you know, and having like an in the city Pokemon game seems kind of neat. But now that I'm done with that list, I have to say that a lot of these are opinion based, you know, so I found a lot of contradictory information, as I said before. So if you were like, hey, Mike, I beat Black and White 2 and it's super easy and your list is trash, then congrats on being the best like no one ever was, you know, because I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what I read. I looked up like 4 or 5 different articles and I kind of combined them together because they would contradict each other constantly. And really, if I wanted to make this list a little better now, I think I would put Black and White close to the top of the list and I'd leave Black and White 2 down here. But I just thought it would be better to bundle them together because they kind of are sequels of... Black and White 2 is a straight up sequel of Black and White. So, All right. So we're into the final question here, and that is, should you, Tyler, do a Nuzlocke run? Well, I'm going to ask...
I personally do one?
I'm going to ask you some questions. Do you love Pokemon, Tyler?
Yes. I would consider myself a Pokemon lover.
Because you're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about it.
Okay, great.
From what I understand with Nuzlocke, it's that like people that I've watched, like streamers and YouTubers, didn't really go in without a lot of knowledge beforehand. So like either you're going to do a lot of studying online or you're going to be playing the game just normally a bunch of times to like get practice. To
learn how it is.
Kind of like in a way how you do like a rating in an MMO or like in Dark Souls where you like learn a boss.
Where you play a lot assuming you're going to fail so that you learn the thing.
Yeah.
So like if you're doing a Nuzlocke run for your first try and you're expecting it to actually go okay and for you to win, you probably have the wrong expectations.
Yeah, like you should go into a Nuzlocke run your first try being like, we'll see how far I get.
Gotcha.
You know, like that's the way to do it. And also, we'll see how far I get, and if all my Pokemon faint, don't reset, just play through the whole game.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so that you get an idea for how the rest of the game is.
Yeah, I would treat it like I'm trying to teach myself how to solo dungeons in Destiny right now, and the best way to learn that from what I've heard is try to play it like you're not going to die, but if you do die, don't stop and start over, just play the whole dungeon out, because you need to practice every part of it.
Right. Oh, yeah, like because if you sure, maybe you can beat the first part without dying, but if you then just die on the second part and then start over, you're not actually practicing the second part.
Exactly.
So you need to just play through it a whole bunch of times, and then hopefully one of these times that you do play through it, you do it without dying.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal. That's 100% the goal. So my second question, Tyler, is how emotionally attached do you get to imaginary electronic animals?
Oh, when I was younger, very. Nowadays, probably not very. But if I named them, I think that would really... I think it would really go a long way towards me getting attached to it. That's part of it, right? You want to be attached to them so it feels bad when you lose.
Exactly. You gotta get hit right in the feels. That's what you gotta do.
Oh, man. Okay.
I'm going to make you name all your Pokemon after your friends.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm making rules for you, Tyler.
Okay.
Make it worse for you. Oh, man, my Pidgey named Mike died. Oh.
Sorry,
right.
buddy.
Sorry, I get it. I tried to use fly. They caught me. Okay, so personally, I feel like I would do a Nuzlocke run after watching all this footage and reading all these articles on it. I think the most important part of a Nuzlocke run, though, is to document your experience. Like, that's what makes it, to me, a Nuzlocke run. And that's what makes it fun, is you get to share this. You build a unique story for yourself, and then you can share it with your friends, whether that's like in a video or a comic. That's how people have done it. And there are so many great stories out there that I thought I would tell you some of my favorites. So as a listener, if you were more interested in Nuzlocke runs, you could watch these YouTube videos or read these articles. So I already mentioned Nuzlocke.com because there's a bunch of comics on there that you could read that I read that are great. YouTube-wise, Griffin McElroy did a Nuzlocke run on Polygon. That's really great before he left Polygon. And so that's also on there. It's on there. If you just type Polygon Nuzlocke run, it'll pop up. Jaden Animations. This is my favorite one. She does Nuzlocke runs and she animates them herself, and the videos are like 20 minutes long of her whole Nuzlocke run, and the animations are really fun because she is an animator, and they're just awesome. Like, I think these are the best videos I found, and they're super entertaining and they're fun to watch. The last one is Austin John Plays, makes some good videos on Nuzlocke runs, and he's the one that did the Let's Go Pikachu run and kind of explained it as he went. So if you're looking for more of like an I'm trying to learn kind of person, then I think Austin John Plays would be a good way to go.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the Nuzlocke run. So I think that does it for that. But the other challenge mode idea I have to do next, and I mean, I'm not going to do it next week, but next would be Kaizo Mario. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, those are absolutely. I've like watched some people do them, and like, whoo, boy, that looks like a real. Doesn't look fun to me. It looks like Nuzlocke Run, I think, sounds kind of fun to me. Kaizo Mario does not look fun.
And so the cool thing about this is there are lots of Kaizo Marios on Super Mario Maker 2, and I have that. So nice. I think I'm going to, at some point, talk about the history of Kaizo Mario and then try to play some very poorly.
Yeah, they're just extremely hard Mario levels, right? Where you need to basically memorize them to know what kind of hazards are coming. Yeah,
you memorize them. You like, there's actually certain moves you do that they like, you learn to Kaizo Mario. I found this on the Jaden Animations YouTube page because she did this as well. She tried to learn it, and it's super, and she did it. She learned it, but you have to learn like specific techniques to pass these levels, like spinning on everything so you don't take damage, like spinning on spiky things. You know how in Super Mario World you can do that spin move to break bricks? Mm-hmm. If you can do that on spike shells and stuff so you don't take damage. So it's like that you do techniques like that to move along. But if you have done a Kaizo Mario, or if you've done a Nuzlocke run, or if you just have any ideas on challenge mode style episodes we could do, send us an email to codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you don't like us talking about this stuff, or if you do like us talking about this stuff, let us know, because this is kind of something that's interesting to me. I like self-imposed player challenges, and I go down rabbit holes on them. So let us know what you think. And with that, Tyler, what you been playing?
Lots of Destiny, always playing lots of Destiny, but I finally finished Ruined King last night. That was a very fun JRPG experience. But that's kind of it as far as what I've been playing. I really just Destiny and finishing up Ruined King.
Yeah, I haven't really been playing a ton either. I played some Jurassic World Evolution 2 some more this week. I decided to pick that up again. I played a little bit of Witcher this week, not a ton, but maybe a couple hours. And I've been playing some Destiny. Oh, and I've been playing Valorant again. And I'm still bad at it, but it's still fun.
Yeah.
So play on normals, turn off all chat. It's a great time. I have a list of sources here that I'm going to put into the Discord, so you can go look at that. If you want to join our Discord, you can do that. I have an invitation on my Twitter page @mecoletta, and you can just send us an email, and I will send you an invitation. But before we go, let's read some emails.
Okay.
This first email is from William. Do you want to read it, Tyler?
Sure. Let me.
I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking. The listeners want to hear your sultry voice. That's what they want to hear.
So William says, hi, Mike and Tyler. As most of your listeners do, I will start by saying this will be a long email, so thanks for reading. I wanted to say that you guys are awesome. Oh, thank you. I was searching for a new video game podcast around September 2020 and stumbled upon yours on Spotify. I've been listening ever since and have finally caught up to present day. You make driving my daughter to and from daycare and work days much more enjoyable. So far, my favorite series was the Doom and id Software series, because the Doom series is one of the best. I also love the Xbox and Xbox 360 episodes on the new Ultimate History of Gaming series. I grew up on both of those and consider those my MO when it comes to gaming. I had a few questions if you guys have time to read on the podcast. 1. Are there any games you find yourself playing seasonally? I vividly remember playing Fallout 3/New Vegas every winter break from freshman to senior year during college because that was the only time I could spend focused on a game for that length of time. During the summer, I would always play Oblivion for a similar reason, but I never switched the time of year that I played these. So for that question, I can say yes. Also during winter break time during college, I usually found myself playing a Final Fantasy game, and my younger brother would also be playing a Final Fantasy game. Usually we were playing different ones, but those are one of the few game series where our interests sort of overlap. We both play a lot of games, but we don't play a lot of the same games. But Final Fantasy is where we overlap, so we sort of bond over playing those together, and I play them almost every winter. What about you, Mike?
Seasonally, I guess I play not the same game every year. I play like spooky games though in Halloween time. I try to do that. Mm-hmm. That's my thing. But I will pick up Elder Scrolls games occasionally, like once a year, like Skyrim or Oblivion. I totally get Oblivion during the summer because that game is gorgeous. Like it was considered gorgeous at the time, you know. But it was.
I upgraded my PC for that. So good. Yeah, it was worth it.
I had it on PC also, and I remember like watching the demo discs about that game, being like, "Look at the trees! Look at how good the trees look!" And it is very like summery. Mm-hmm. So I totally get playing Oblivion in the summer to the point where I think that should be something I do, you know. But not a ton. I don't have one that I play like every year, every Christmas or anything like that.
Cool. All right. Second question in William's email. Are there any games on your favorite systems that you consider sleepers? I remember for Xbox, I played Dark Watch a lot. It was a game set in the Old West and you're a vampire hunter who becomes one himself. You must then use your newly acquired powers and an array of steampunk / gothic weapons to defeat the dark forces that spawn across the West. I thought this was a fantastic game, but none of my friends knew about it growing up, and few of my friends today remember it. By the way, Tyler, if you're looking for a great sleeper JRPG, please check out Eternal Sonata for either 360 or PS3. Do you have any sleepers, Mike?
Any sleeper games? I played games as a kid thinking they were sleepers and they were not. So I was like, man, there's this game on Xbox that no one plays called Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and it's a total sleeper hit. And I'm like, no, everyone played it. Okay, I just didn't know because I was a kid and I was an idiot. So
you were in Alaska. You were away from the rest of.
Yeah, I also thought Advance Wars was like a sleeper game, and in reality, it's like no, everyone played Advance Wars. So now the only one I think is considered a sleeper, and I'm starting to realize that a lot more people have played this game too. So it probably isn't, but I will die on the hill that Snowboard Kids is a sleeper hit because I love
Snowboard Kids.
Snowboard Kids. I never played the second one, just the original Snowboard Kids on N64. So great. What about you, Tyler?
For me, the first ones that come to mind are, and I've talked about them on the podcast before, I love Wet on the 360 and PS3. I think that game did not get the praise it deserved. It wasn't a perfect game, but I loved it, and I think it should have done better than it did. I've never heard of anybody else who's played that game. That and Recore on the Xbox One, and I believe it's on Game Pass on PC as well. Recore is like feels very much like a platformer in the style of the later Jak and Daxter games, especially the third one because they both have some kind of sandy post-apocalyptic stuff going on. I don't see very many people talk about that. I remember when it came out, it didn't get great reviews, and then they released like a definitive edition like 6 months or a year later that fixed a lot of bugs and like made the game generally better. And it seemed like nobody really cared at the time because the original release was not great. So I will sing the praises of Recore a lot. And I've been meaning to check out Eternal Sonata for 360 because I've heard really good things about that one. I need to play that. I need to play Lost Odyssey as well. JRPGs are just so long though, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of those genres that you really, when you say I like this genre, you're committing to hours and hours and hours playtime.
Yep. Okay, the rest of this email, he says, thanks. That's all for this email. Thanks so much for making Mondays enjoyable and stay well. P.S. I was interested in your comments regarding Japanese corporate culture and some of the Ultimate History of Video Game gaming chapters and did some research. The reason that many Japanese corporations moved employees to different positions where they knew the employees would not like it is because the labor and employment laws in Japan are very pro-employee. Unlike America, which has many right-to-work states, there are a few times that a Japanese business may fire someone, i.e. theft, violence, extreme, and consistent underperformance. So instead, they move them to a less than desirable position within the company in the hopes that they will leave on their own. So,
Interesting.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. I kind of dig that though, because it people not like, I don't like it when people lose their livelihood like that. And so like being able to be, even if you move to a position within the company that you don't like, at least you're still getting paid while you figure out your next move. Right. And then you can leave on your own and go somewhere else. I dig that. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's kind of cool that at least they don't throw you on the street, that's because, I've had friends that have gotten fired before from their like office jobs, and it's just like such a sudden, just life shift that you're not ready for. So it's at least if they move you to a different spot, you're like, okay, I know my company wants me out.
I see what's happening here. Yeah.
But at least like I can still get paid and work. And then while I look for a new thing, you get some stability there, which is nice.
Yep.
Thank you for the email, William. That's really good. Those really good questions too. I wish I played a game seasonally now. I want to go find a seasonal game for myself,
Yeah.
All right. This next email is from Carl. Carl says, salutations. Hey guys, Carl here from South Africa. Growing up in the 90s, I had almost zero interaction with anything other than PlayStation, Sega, and the old TV games my brother had, which he says is the Master System. And Nintendo were the Pokemon guys. If you didn't play Pokemon on your Game Boy Color, then why the hell did you have one? That's a really good, really good point. PlayStation was it. My first game was Small Soldiers, and from there, my library slowly grew. When I found out that Nintendo wasn't just putting TV games, the blanket term we used to describe anything up until the 8-bit generation on cartridges, but actual PlayStation 1 quality games on a cartridge, my mind was blown away, and so my journey to devour anything and everything related to the history of video gaming began. I've always been trying to relive the games of old in a sort of alternate timeline fashion and appreciate the games for what they were at the time compared to the consoles I was playing back then, and it has been an absolute blast. I am sure many of your listeners would love to have been in my shoes of playing Mario 64, Super Metroid, or even the Ocarina of Time for the first time in 2021. Hopefully that context will serve as a decent segue, nice. I see what you did there, to my actual questions to you, because I have no one in my friend circle I can pose this to, and hopefully you guys can elaborate a little further on this. First, imagine, if you will, a timeline where the pinnacle of video games ended with the Sony PlayStation 2, and from then on out, it was a series of add-on upgrades, much like they were doing in the 90s, such as RAM expansions, new optical disc drives, and so on, and we had all these exceptionally capable PlayStation 2 machines.
You want the cop-out answer here is, we have this. It's called PCs, and we've been upgrading them. I've been slowly upgrading my own PC since I was a small child.
So you're saying your PC is stronger than a PlayStation 2 right now?
Yes, right now. That's what I'm saying. To go along with the spirit of this question of like, what if you just had this like giant like monstrosity of a PlayStation 2? That seems interesting. I think what we would see over time is like a coalescence of like, okay, here's a PlayStation 2, but with all of the the 2020 add-ons built into it, and it wouldn't really be a PS2 anymore. It would still be a like what part, like it's like a ship of Theseus problem, right? Like at what point does it cease to be a PlayStation 2? If you're constantly switching in, like adding new RAM in and new processors or new, like, I guess at a certain point it becomes a PlayStation 3 or 4 or 5, right? I don't know. That's an interesting question that I'm not sure has an answer.
You don't really get a lot of podcasts that cover the ship of Theseus takes.
Yeah.
That's really special to us. So I agree with you. I mean, yeah, at a certain point, it would no longer be a PlayStation 2. It would just be like this monstrosity.
Yeah, which I guess is kind of what my PC is now. It still is technically the same like architecture as a PC from 2000 or even earlier, but it's not though. It's really not the same thing at all, I can install Windows 95 on this thing. I don't think that would work.
But you want to.
But I want to now, and I want to find out if my Core i5 from 2017 can
Handle
run
it.
Windows 95. If it can handle
Can you handle
the
the
greatness
Windows
of Windows
95?
95.
All right, the second one. Imagine a secondary timeline where Tom Kalinske got to pull the strings he wanted. What would Sega's offerings be to the current market? How would they distinguish themselves? Would they be in Nintendo's space, relying on games? Or would they be taking on Sony and Microsoft on specs? Will they ever make a console comeback? So, I think because Kalinske, we talked about this before, wanted the 32X, right?
Yeah.
He didn't want the Saturn. So I could see Sega, if they were the fourth, being very much in the Nintendo space of, yeah, our tech is going to always be a little behind, but we're really going to push our games. So, and I honestly, I mean, this is just a hypothetical situation because in reality, I don't think there's room for another like big console manufacturer to be in this.
I agree.
But hypothetically, that's where I would see them. Is like we're taking on Nintendo still. It's like Nintendo and Sega would be battling for this. Like we got the games, our own IPs. Our hardware is not as hardcore as like PlayStation or Xbox, but we're doing this fight instead. You know, because they could be the cheaper option, the cheapest option, maybe even. You know,
Yeah.
Like imagine it's cheaper than Nintendo, which is kind of weird because Nintendo's already like compared to them, it's pretty cheap. You know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, actually. I think because, like, right now we've talked about how Nintendo doesn't really compete with anybody. Like, they're not really competing with Sony or Microsoft, especially if you look at things like the original Wii. Like, they just blew everything else out of the water. Like, Sony and Microsoft compete on specs, and they have a lot of the same games between them, and they're, like, sort of going after the same audience. And Nintendo doesn't. They go after a different audience with a different strategy. I think maybe Sega would do the same thing Nintendo is doing, but Nintendo would finally have some competition. So we might actually see Nintendo have better hardware and Sega also have better hardware than what the Switch currently has, because they would be competing themselves for that level of nostalgia. Or we would just see like better and better Mario games versus better and better Sonic games, and like the battle of the first parties going on there, because Sega had some pretty good first party stuff too. Not as good as Nintendo, I don't think, back in the day, but still pretty good. While Microsoft and Sony would still be fighting their own thing. That's one option, I suppose. I guess the other is like now the spec war is a three-way fight between Sega, Sony, and Microsoft. But I don't know if Sega would have been able to keep up there. Like the Dreamcast was already behind. I guess in this world where Tom Kalinske got what he wanted, does the Saturn not happen, and thus the Dreamcast has to come earlier than it did when it was already too early, I think.
Yeah, I would think that in this world,
I think the Dreamcast is even more poorly timed if we don't have the Saturn.
I think it would be a paradigm shift though of like there wouldn't be a Dreamcast, there wouldn't be a Saturn. Instead, it would be always like almost a technologically generation behind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like they would have just waited for the PS2. Like we would have gone from 32X to like the Sega that competes more directly with the PS2, like with the DVD drive and stuff. You think?
Yeah, I think that would have been it.
That's such a long time between that, because that would have been 94 to, well, yeah.
That's kind of what he wanted, because I thought his whole strategy, and of course we're just like editorializing here, but
sure,
was he thought that they had this great hardware and they were pushing things out too fast because they thought they needed to. So I could see them slowing it way down, just focusing on selling 32Xs and even still Genesis stuff for a while until that market completely died. And then they would have, timing wise, I think, jumped out with the PlayStation 2 in that generation.
I think from like 96, 97 to 2000, Sega would have dropped off a cliff because nobody was going to buy a Sega. Even with a 32X, nobody would have bought that in 1996, right? Like, not with the PlayStation being like as good as it was, and not with the Nintendo 64 being out. Like, they fall even further behind in that sense. And I think they do even worse than they did. Like, they made a lot of mistakes with the 32X going into the Saturn, going into the Dreamcast. But I think if you just take away the Saturn and do the 32X, I think you just end up even worse.
Well, wait, would that mean the Dreamcast? Which generation did Dreamcast compete with?
Well, that's a great question, because it's like it came out in 99, so it was far and away better than like the PlayStation 1 and the N64. But the following year, when the PS2 came out, it was blown away by the PS2. Like the PS2 was just better, right?
So in that sense, wouldn't it actually be better if the Dreamcast came out earlier with the PlayStation 1?
Yeah. So you're advocating dropping the Saturn in
no Saturn, 32X, Dreamcast comes out when the PlayStation comes out, and they compete with each other.
Well, that's when the Saturn came out, though. Was when the PlayStation came out. So if you wanted to go into the future and grab a 1999 thing and release it in 95, they would have done great, I guess.
Sega needs a time machine is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think in any situation, the Sega fails is what we're kind of figuring it out in our little thought experiment here.
That's why I think like the wrong call, the 32X was the wrong call. That's like Tom Kalinske was wrong here, you know? Like this isn't a like, if only Tom had gotten what he'd wanted, Sega would be so much better. Like I think they'd be worse if he got what he wanted.
So really the move would have been go back in time, and when they were saying we're going to build a 32X, kick that person out a window and then just wait until the Saturn.
Yeah, just stop, put out the Saturn, compete directly with the PlayStation, with the Saturn, and without having the baggage of the 32X weighing down the Saturn, and then launch the Dreamcast with a DVD drive in 2000 or 2001 with the PS2, with specs that have been upgraded to compete more directly with the PS2, and that's how Sega stays in it. But they just released too many things, and then they've mistimed how they released those too many things. And
I think we've officially figured it out. We've officially figured out how to save Sega back in the 90s.
That's right.
So now we got to get a time machine. Yeah, this kind of thing. I love video. I mean, obviously, I love video game history. I am the worst at remembering dates with anything, though. So it's what makes these like hypotheticals so hard for me. I'm like, which generation is that a part of? What if they did? It's just so hard to remember all these dates. Like, I can't do it.
The Dreamcast is hard to pin down a generation anyway, because it's like in between. And so it was clearly better than the things that were out when it came out, but then it fell behind so quickly because it was too early. Like they were Sony won by being early to the PS2 generation. And Microsoft sort of did pretty well by being early to the Xbox 360 generation, but the Dreamcast was late to the N64 PlayStation generation and way too early for the generation that came after it. And so it didn't really have a home, and it just kind of, it did well until its competition came out, and then it died quickly, which is exactly what happened.
But we do have people on this podcast that listen, that that's their favorite, and so we don't want to make you feel bad.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of great games on it.
There's great games on Dreamcast.
Super fun.
Yeah, it was a weird time. It's like a lovable loser is what the Dreamcast is like.
We're just talking about why it failed, which unfortunately doesn't have to have anything to do with how good the software is for it. It's really just about timing and how well it did in comparison to the things around it,
I think what we should all do is we should all go buy used Sega Dreamcasts, and then we should put DVD drives in them. We all learn to solder. We put DVD drives in them, and then we pretend that that's what they really were, and we try to change history now.
Yeah, okay, I'm in.
We say, no, the Sega always had a DVD drive in it. And it's like a Berenstein versus Berenstein Bears situation. We do that to people.
Yeah.
Are people down? Send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. All right, I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for it's really nice when you send us the emails. It's really great, and so we really appreciate it. If you want to send us an email again, it's codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Tyler's on Twitter @SneakerElf. I already plugged my Twitter. Tyler, you just need to say bye to the listener in the best way you can. Just however you want to do it. It's up to you. It's totally balls in your court.
Goodbye.
Perfect.
This has been a Podaholics Comedy Network presentation. Podaholics.com